Bonjour mes amis, cette fois nous allons parler de parler. This time we're going to talk about talking. Let's take a look at some very young French people talking, or not talking, as the case may be.
Hugo, c'est pour toi.
Salut Hugo. Alors il paraît que tu voulais me dire quelque chose. C'est Juliette à la récré qui m'a dit que tu voulais me dire un truc.
Je voulais juste te dire que... bon bah il faut que je te laisse, hein. Je dois y aller, salut.
Maline Visio, c'est mieux de se voir quand on se parle. France Télécom.
Of course, what Hugo has written on his hand is Je t'aime, which is this contest means I love you. So until he resorts to writing on his hand, he's actually talking to the little girl. I could say this in this way. Hugo parle à la fille, or Hugo talks to the little girl. Let's look at how the verb parler works.
Bonjour tout le monde et bienvenue sur Coffee Break French. We're here today in the metro in Paris and I'm going to be telling you about how to conjugate a verb. As you already know, there are 6 parts that we've been learning. We've got the I part, the you part, the he part, the she part, the we part, the you part, and then the they part, and the they part. I think we'll use these passengers, you don't think? Non, bien sûr que non. Ok. Alors, on va utiliser parler, le verbe parler, qui veut dire bien sûr, to speak. Donc, je parle, tu parles, il parle, elle parle, nous parlons, pardon, vous parlez, il parle, elle parle. Allez, on va refaire, ok? Alors, je parle, tu parles, il parle, elle parle, nous parlons, pardon, vous parlez, il parle, elle parle. Okay? One thing, okay? What happens if I'm talking about these 2 people here, a male and a female at the same time? Well, we need to use the il plural form, the ILS form. Even though there's a female involved as well, we need to use the il form. So we would say, il parle français. Vous parlez français, n'est-ce pas? D'accord. Alors, au revoir et bonne continuation.
To see the verb parler in your online textbook, go to Chapter 2, Grammaire, and then click on 2.2, ER Verbs Regular. So now you have an idea of what parler looks like and sounds like. Take a moment now, pause the video, and repeat all the forms of the verb as you see them here on the screen. Okay, now let's talk more about talking. The verb parler in French means both to talk and to speak. So we're using both ways. To talk to someone, as in Hugo parle à la fille, and also with languages, as in je parle français. So here's a question for you. Quelle langue est-ce que tu parles? Quelle langue est-ce que tu parles? What language to speak? I will answer first. Je parle espagnol. Je parle français, je parle anglais, je parle portugais, et je parle un peu d'allemand. Et toi? How about you? Take a moment, pause the video and say what languages you speak. If you need to look up a language, just go to wordreference.com to find its French translation. Go ahead. So now that we talk about talking and speaking, what's so special about the verb parler? Well, nothing really, except that it gives us a model for how a whole group of verbs work. In fact, you already know 3 of these: aimer, adorer, and détester. You use this when you talk about la nourriture, food. And if you go back to the page of your online textbook where you found the verb parler 2.2 ER verbs regular, and you see that aimer, adorer, and détester are part of this family of verbs along with several others. But what does this all mean? Well, it means that all of these verbs end in er, in what we call the infinitive or the unchanged form, and that then I go make the I form, the you form, the he or she form, and so on. The endings are always the same. That's why je parle, j'aime, j'adore, je déteste all end in the same way, with an E. You'll be the same way for you, too, except that you form gets S added at the end. Tu parles, tu aimes, tu adores, et tu détestes, and so forth. So for all these verbs, the endings are the same. That's the part you see in the red letters of the verb parler in your online textbook. Pause for a moment and look at if you need to. But there's one more thing we need to know about these verbs, and that's it. The boot. What does a boot have to do with all this, you ask? Well, if you draw a boot shape over my verb parler, the forms of the verb inside the boot all sound the same. So with parler, we say je parle, tu parles, il parle, elle parle. And for the plural form that ends in ent, il parle, elle parle. Did you notice that parle sound exactly the same? I'll repeat them again. Je parle, tu parles, il parle, elle parle. And for the plural form that ends in ent, il parle, elle parle. But wait a minute, you're thinking, what about all those letters that don't get pronounced, like the S at the end of tu and the ent at the end of il and elle? Well, these are just silent endings. We write them, but we don't say them. If you think that's weird, think about English for a minute and you realize it's not so different. Take a look at the word but and ask yourself how many of those letters we actually pronounce. You've said. But outside the boot, things are different. The nouns form of the vous form get their own pronunciation. For example, nous parlons et vous parlez. So, now that we understand that, let's use some more of these verbs to ask and answer questions. Pause the video to go to study the ER verbs in 2.2, ER verbs regular, the list that begins with adorer and ends with trouver. Then come back and I have a few questions for you. Go ahead. Okay, now you study your verbs, so you should be able to understand and answer the following questions. Remember, that's est-ce que je just means I'm asking you a question. For example, I ask you, est-ce que tu parles français? Est-ce que tu parles espagnol? You could answer, oui, je parle espagnol, or je parle français, or je ne parle pas espagnol, or je ne parle pas français. So ready for the question? After each one of those, you have a chance to compose your answer. Here we go. Est-ce que tu chantes? Est-ce que tu danses? Est-ce que tu études beaucoup? Est-ce que tu habites à Frédéric? Est-ce que tu regardes American Idol? Est-ce que tu travailles? So were you able to answer this question this way? I will give you a few yes answer and a few no answer, so you can see both. Oui, je chante. Non, je ne danse pas. Non, je n'étudie pas beaucoup. Non, je n'habite pas à Frédéric. Non, je ne regarde pas American Idol. Oui, je travaille. At this point, you are getting used to the pronoun je losing its n and becoming j apostrophe je, which is thus comes before a vowel. Same thing with ne. It loses the e too when it comes before a vowel. Now, let's get things straight. J'étudie beaucoup and je n'habite pas à Frédéric, and so forth. Bien, mes amis, that's it for this segment. À la prochaine.